Hi, this is Angelo for the Sacred Inclusion Network. If you'd like to know more about us, please visit our website, sacredinclusion.com. Today I'm here with my colleague and friend, Cindy Franklin, who's a senior consultant for Proteus International and an executive consultant and coach and facilitator. She is also a board member of the Sacred Inclusion Network. And Cindy's perspective is informed by her years living in various cultures overseas and by her many years of meditation and contemplative practice. Now, Cindy and I are co-facilitating a workshop that has in its title "Staying Sane in This Election Chaos." And the first part of the title actually is breaking through the cultural trance. So we're going to just explore that a little bit, her and I. Cindy, you and I have been talking about this for a while, but what is your sense as to what is a cultural trance? What does that look like? What is it?
Well, for me, you've mentioned that I've participated in different cultures, lived in different cultural contexts, and I feel that when you have one culture, you don't see the trance so well. Then when you almost let go of that and have another culture, you see, oh, this is really different. And then you see a third and you say, oh, this is really different. And you start to realize that you have to, and then a professional persona, and then a personal, who you are in your family, who are in your profession, who you are, even how you gesture. If when I would go to France when I was young, I would start gesturing. It'd be like I had a different personality that would go with the language. So it's just noticing that we're not a stable way of showing up, but we show up in very, very different ways in different cultures, and we kind of have to, because you have to speak the language of the people you interact with. So then, as what I started noticing for myself is, I don't just put on that cultural context when I interact with it, but it kind of sticks with me and in me. And sometimes it sticks in me in ways that I like and want. And some of the contexts that I interact with stick in me in ways that I don't like and don't want. And so that's when I started thinking, how do I be intentional about that?
Hmm.
And
Well,
in particular,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
well, I mean, and in particular, it comes up during this political season,
Yeah,
right?
that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah.
So what does cultural trance have to do with politics and this moment that we're in, which is preceding a very contentious election?
Yeah. So I noticed that there was a particular figure on the scene of American politics who, and I don't think it's limited to this person, but it was very much exacerbated, who was evoking a mood of fear, anger, outrage. He was evoking it in his followers towards certain groups. But then, if you're not one of his followers, he was evoking it in you towards him. And I realized, wow, this is a trance that he has successfully inculcated all of us into that trance. And there's this kind of undertone of fear or anxiety or a feeling of outrage that I think is very much in the cultural stream during this political season. That's one. And then I get notifications from the party affiliation that I connect with. And those notifications are also seeming to intended to drum up feelings of outrage and anger and all kinds of feelings that are not the kinds of feelings that I want to cultivate in my life. So I get up, I practice, my meditation practice to become calm and open and loving, and then cultivate those thoughts. And then I open my emails and it's the exact opposite. And so how do I relate to and stay engaged in this very important, crucial time politically, because that's so important, but without taking on parts of that trance that I find undo what I want to create in myself.
That's interesting. I think I'm going to make the assumption that we're both spiritually oriented people here, and maybe some of the people that are listening to us are also that way. I find that there is a sort of a scale of perspectives, um, ways that people deal with what we're talking about. One of them is that people just disconnect. I don't want to know anything about this stuff. This is not me. This is not me. These people are fighting about this. This is not me. Some people go to the other extremes and they're so rabid and sort of just like they've just got to fight. They've got to do something about it. And I personally feel like I'm sort of in the middle of this group, to be honest with you. I mean, I can be very triggered at the same time, and I can allow myself to be a little bit more detached. Where do you fit in this sort of spectrum as a spiritually oriented person?
So there's where I do fit in and where I'd like to fit in, which are two different places. So I'd like to say what I really deeply admire and want to sort of inch towards more. I actually feel this is a very important time, to have civic responsibility. I think I have a very strong pull to detach from it because I get very agitated by it. But I definitely don't want to do that. And what I would like to do, I do stay engaged to some extent and involved to some extent, and then try to manage my thinking and my feeling, including towards people that I disagree with. And I find that I am actually naturally very aware that we can. It's too. I feel bad about what's happening in the world, and I feel that it's easy to let myself off the hook by virtue of the fact that I'm on the good team. I believe in supporting positive things or act towards those things politically. But the truth is that there's way better that I could do on many levels of my life. And I think that I don't want to let myself off the hook by assuming I'm on the good team when I'm only partly on the good team looking at my life, right? There's lots of things I could improve about my life. The people I most deeply admire are beyond what I think that I would ask those of us who are not. Let me back up a moment. There's people that I deeply admire who engage in a particular way, which I could talk about. But I also think that each person has their own nature and the qualities that they're on earth to share. And so, I am not naturally oriented to be successful in certain things that I very much admire people who are. So, the ideal would be somebody who is like a Martin Luther King, who could engage really, really harsh environment and maintain love as he did it. But I think that that's asking ourselves to be saints, and the level of sacrifice he was willing to make, which was just astounding. So that's the saint, what a saint can do, right? But I think for what a regular person can do, who's not at his level of, sanctity is the only word I could use for somebody who has that kind of capacity, is to try to stay involved and try to see the humanity of the other person and see that they probably are right about certain things that you're not right about, and still, work strongly for what you believe is necessary and important. So that to me is something that is within all our capacity, and I feel I have some capacity for that. And then I constantly see myself knocked over by a wave, or
Oh,
in
you're very
conversations with.
honest. Yeah. I just want to, I think it might be useful to talk about a moment for about ways that we're triggered. You mentioned that, well, I know me, um, I can be triggered very easily. You mentioned like getting ads like in email. Um, for me, it's like cable TV. You have people that are for whatever reason they're outraged, and I find that it kind of like makes me want to do what they're doing in a certain sense, even though a part of me realizes that that's not useful. What are some ways that maybe you get triggered or you think other people get triggered in this election season?
I think I get triggered by ridiculous comments like that Haitian immigrants are eating your cats and dogs. I mean, just to say the most obvious thing, it just makes you feel insane that you're in a company that in a country where a political candidate would say something like that. So those kinds of things I think are triggering, and it's shocking to me that a person doesn't completely lose their credibility by saying stuff like that. I mean, just to be blunt about it.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I do get triggered by the fact by these emails I get. I don't get triggered in a as strong a way, but it's almost like they want you to hate the person you hate. I'm saying, obviously, I kind of revealed I'm on the Democratic side, right, by what I just said, so I might as well go there. But I get Democratic emails, none of which have a feeling of love for your Republican neighbor, you
Right.
know? And I think it's a terrible mistake to split the country into teams. And I do think that there's more common values that we share, and we're just listening to different news programs. And then there's some primitive thing that goes into team sports and some, my side versus your side. And it seems to be in the political process in America on both sides of the aisle. And that really disturbs me that we can't move past that. And so therefore, internally, I constantly focusing on moving past that.
It's interesting you talked about the sports analogy because as much as I would like to be Johnny Universal, when the Olympics comes on, um, I have the same them versus us thing that I condemn in other people. It's interesting. It is like a primitive type of thing that's in us, and I don't even know if it's can we can even talk about transcending it, but it's there. It is something.
Well, I had a client that I was interviewing about something, and he was from Boston. And he said that one of the things he loves to do is to go into a bar in New York with his Red Sox hat on. And he says, I'm sure to get a lot of arguments. And we get into these really heated arguments, and then we have beer, and it's such a bonding thing. So I actually think a certain kind of sports competition is you're not trying to kill the other side. You're rooting. You can kind of respect the team on the other side too, and shake hands at the end of the day. I think it's a lot more civilized than where we go in our political process, actually, even though I use that analogy. But we forget at the end of the day to, you know,
That's a great analogy because, yes, they're fighting teeth, tooth, and nails at the end. They're shaking hands, and they know that we're both in the same sport. We cannot even exist without the other. Let's say. So I think it's a good analogy,
yeah, your team wouldn't have any, you'd have no salary as a
right?
basketball or baseball, whatever you are, if the other team weren't doing it. And plus, which I'm sure the players really admire each other's skill. And a really good competitor wants a great competitor because that makes you even better. So I think, yeah.
So how do you think your spiritual practice, and I'm happy to talk about mine, helps you navigate these sort of rocky or choppy waters that we're in?
Well, I think
To the degree that it does.
I actually do think it does. I think it does because, there's a prayer that I'll talk about two different things, and then I would love to hear about yours. So there's a prayer that is part of the metta practice that is in the Buddhist tradition when I participate there, which I do a lot, where I love Thich Nhat Hanh's formulation of it, where you sort of think of all of the progressive human beings, close into you, and then once you have more difficult with them, then the entire world, and you say, internally, you may be free from inner and outer harm, may you be free from guilt, shame, and hatred, may you come to live with the ease of an open heart, may you come to know your true nature as a boundless source of love, wisdom, and compassion. And it's funny because I can't honestly wish for the success of somebody who is trying to evoke hatred towards legal citizens who are Haitian, or even if they weren't, with false accusations. I can't wish their success in what their endeavor is, because to me that endeavor is unethical. I wouldn't wish that, but I can wish. But a natural part of me wants them to be ashamed of themselves, right? To feel guilty and ashamed. But I love this prayer because it reminds me I don't want them to feel guilty or ashamed. This tendency to want to humiliate the other is actually a really horrible tendency. So it's may you be free from guilt, shame, and hatred.
Hmm.
So if this person who's doing this is not entangled in hatred, the hatred that, by the way, I feel how painful it is when I hear what they say and I start to hate them for saying it. And I'm like, wow, that's a horrible experience. So I don't wish it for myself. I don't wish it for them. So that practice helps me say, oh gosh, this is a storm that this person is in, and it has a really tragic root. In fact, I have one more thing to say on that. I feel like I'm, if you don't mind, but I was listening to another podcast where somebody was saying about, he wrote a book called Feh, F-E-H, and he was in a Orthodox Jewish community growing up, and he felt that he was brought up in a self-shaming way. And he said, I really recognize when I see someone else who was brought up with self-hatred. And he used Trump as the example of somebody who he could just smell the self-hatred that he was brought up under. And the reaction is to try to then externalize that humiliation onto somebody else. It's a very painful, horrible experience. So to really pray for that person and pray for their well-being, pray for them to live with the ease of an open heart, I can do it really sincerely. And then if I can do it in the morning, maybe I can remember it in the moment. And I had something else, but I want to hear yours.
Well, you probably already know this about me, but I'm a regular practitioner of Tonglen. And
Yeah.
actually, it's a similar perspective on certain elements of people do uh, the practice that you mentioned in different ways. But a lot of what I try to do is I start by feeling compassion for myself and whatever in a kind of a process which I won't go into. But then I do my best to extend it to my friends, but also people that I don't that are so-called enemies, people that I have difficulty with. And I also make a conscious attempt to see that there's a common humanity between me and everyone. And you say that maybe Trump has suffered from trauma. You didn't say like exactly that, but I feel that. I feel like there's a humanity there. There's something there that I can feel empathetic towards.
Right.
And I'm not always successful at that, but generally speaking, I think my spiritual practice has helped me um, have that be part of my life and my perspective. I think that even the most, horrendous criminal, there's something that caused that person to do that. They're not doing that because they're inherently evil. Maybe they've been conditioned or something like that. And there's a little boy or there's a little girl that's in there that is crying out for, for affection, for love, So it's an effort. It's an effort, but it's we're all the same. We're all the same human. That's the reality. We like to think that we're separate, and maybe we don't like to think we're separate. But we have this illusion of separation, but we're part of this one thing. So, and whatever we can do to realize that we share a common humanity is a good thing. Maybe that is itself spirituality.
I agree. And by the way, as you say that, I also brings up that if we humiliate each other, have contempt for each other, we actually push the other person and ourselves in the direction of what we're trying not to create. So that's
Almost
beautiful
like,
that.
by doing that, we're also we're expressing contempt for ourselves, because
Yes.
it's just there's no two ways about it. Either we're all one or we're not,
Hmm.
it's a binary thing.
Well, I would love to hear more about your self-compassion process too.
Well, not to make this all about me, but one of the things I do periodically, I don't do it all the time, but when I'm walking on the street and I see a person that's like in a great mood, I start thinking about wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody felt like this person? And conversely, if I see somebody that's having a hard time, I not only do I extend compassion, but I also visualize that there's other people in the world that are feeling exactly that way. And I do that with myself. When I have something about myself that I don't like, I realize that I'm not the only person that experiences this. And to some for some reason, the idea of you know that it's not just me helps me be compassionate for myself and for others.
That's beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'll try to get back to the other point that to your original question, but what you just said reminds me of a podcast I recently listened to with Tim Ferriss interviewing Elizabeth Gilbert. And she was talking about, it was a lot about self-compassion and having the feeling that your own image of the divine is holding you in love all the time.
Hmm.
And and it was very little about how you should treat other people, but it was really clear from what she was saying that if you want to treat other people well, start by having your sense of the greater whole in which you live, that all embracing presence, whatever it is, that orients towards you with love
Hmm.
and forgiveness, and that you can kind of feel that in your own towards yourself. It would lead to much more natural generosity, which I think is the opposite of what can happen when you have certain ways of orienting to the sacred as being very punishing or critical towards you. So I love that you mentioned that. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a very important place to start with yourself like that.
I think one has to start with oneself in a way. I think the sort of like the navel gazing people are right on that level. But
Yeah,
the other part is that we're not just here for ourselves; we're here for others.
absolutely. And so to that other point, one of the scriptural sources that I like is I think of the Bhagavad Gita, which is this Indian epic poem. And I think these are archetypal forms. You can think of them like that, where there's this battle between two members of family, and Krishna, who is one of the forms of the sacred, of course, in Hinduism, is the charioteer for Arjuna, who's the hero in this story. And he's basically teaching him how to do your duty because you should, but do it without hatred.
Mm.
Do it without hatred. Do it without, he said, also, you have the right to your action. You don't have the right to the fruit of your action. So to feel peace that you did the best that you could and that you don't want any kind of hatred in your heart when you do it. And then you can let it go. And it's not up to you what happens. Because you can only do your best into this great, network of life that we're all participating in. But I loved what Navalny said in his email where he was speaking to the rest of Russia. You're in some countries and the cost of participating politically can be catastrophic. He said, you don't have to do what I do. You don't have to give everything, but you should do something.
Mm.
And I think, we all, in a moment like this, historically, we have to do something. And then we look at our own heart, what that something is and how much that something is. And then try to do it without hatred and without the agitation of being distraught about the possible outcomes, maybe out of our control.
Mm.
But to feel if I did my best, if I did my part, I can be more at peace, no matter what the outcome is, than if I don't.
Yeah, it's very well said. So we have this event coming up. I don't remember the date, but it's the third Saturday of October. Let me read our description and then let's talk about what we want people to get out of it.
Okay.
I wrote, join us for a transformative workshop exploring the intersection of personal growth, societal change, and mindful action. In a world filled with division and uncertainty, it's easy to get caught up in anger, fear, and apathy. But what if we could cultivate a sense of equanimity and connection, even in the midst of chaos? So, and then I talk about something else, and I say, together we're going to we're going to do our best to build bridges of understanding and discover ways to stay active in supporting our values while avoiding harmful moods and actions. So, maybe that says it, but maybe we can amplify. What do we want people to leave as a result of this experience that we're going to co-create?
Well, I kind of almost would rather start with what we want them to bring,
Hmm. Okay,
because I think what we leave with will depend on what we bring.
that's true.
And I don't think it's just you and I who will be bringing it. I think it will be the community of people who are called to participate. So I guess what I would love people to bring is just a desire to find ways to stay connected with the necessary actions while cultivating the kind of states of being that they feel will help them feel nourished, feel good, will help them become who they want to be instead of the reverse. And I'm looking forward to being nourished by what I learned from the other people who are there about, well, how do we do this?
Yeah, I am too. And I'm also looking for us to honestly look at the ways that we are triggered. How are we affected by this? Because
Yeah.
there is a tendency, at least among some of my friends, to just avoid it, to put a mask over themselves and act like they're not seeing these things. And I can understand why someone would want to do that because there's um, um, a lot of things to see that you'd rather not see.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really a crucial thing, and maybe the first thing is to look and examine, well, what's actually happening to us,
Yeah.
now and inside of us as we interact here.
And then we can talk about what we want to do about it.
Yep.
All right, so I'm greatly looking forward to this, and I welcome all of you. I'll leave a link to the description of the exploration. I hope you will join us. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Angelo.